Hi folks, I'm Dane. I'm with a company called The Third Floor, and The Third Floor is a visualization company. So what we do is take media creators through the process of either the written word or concept to what the final image is. And these days a lot of that is virtual reality and augmented reality. We do most of the Lucasfilm, Marvel, and Disney films, but a lot of other things as well. And we're expanding quite a bit into interactive experiences and gaming lately.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm with THX. You might know the brand from the film and cinema world. It's also been a consumer electronics certification brand. Our moderator just walked in the room. Now we're working on new technologies and solutions like interesting new analog amplifiers and solutions for headphone and speaker 3D audio.
Hi guys, I really apologize I'm so late. This is really beyond the pale. I've never done anything like this before, so my apologies. So I'm happy to be here, and you guys just started introducing yourselves?
Yeah, we're halfway through.
Beautiful.
2 people.
All right, please proceed.
My name is
Allow
Christopher.
me to check out for a minute.
Okay. My name is Christopher Bellasi. I'm the head of business development at Proof. We too are a visualization company, friendly competitors to the Third Floor over
That's
there.
right.
And
I'll make
you
sure
know, our primary business is feature films. We're probably best known for our work on the Fast and Furious franchises. We've done the last 6. However, we too have gotten into visualization for virtual reality experiences. Most recent titles you might recognize would be The Raid for 24 Legacy, a VR prequel. The Night Before, which was kind of a Santa sleigh ride experience that had a physical installation at the Grove last Christmas. Our primary client in the space thus far has been a production company called Here Be Dragons. And so we do previs for VR. We also are using virtual reality as a visualization tool for some of our theme park-based projects.
My name is Andy Cochran. I am an independent content creator working in VR, AR, installations, live events, basically anywhere that technology and experience come together. I was at a company called Murata for almost 7 years, where I started out on their sort of visual effects side, but then was leading a lot of their digital and interactive and experiential projects. So in the VR and AR space, been working on a project I can't talk about, actually several I can't talk about this year yet, but leading into this year, have done VR experiences for Mr. Robot, The Strain, GE, Google, just sort of a wide range of commercial network and studio clients, kind of combinations of 360 video, 360 animation, and real time. So kind of hodgepodge mixing, playing in all of the pools. And I'm currently acting as more of an independent consultant, project manager, creative lead, kind of putting together projects and going into existing companies that want to do something in VR and AR, and essentially creating a little Delta Force pop-up inside that company that can help them execute that project, and then we move on. So I've been doing that this year and done a DataViz installation, 9 360 pieces, and some other stuff that's fun.
So I wanted, can I ask, who do we have in the audience? Are we mostly entrepreneurs? How many entrepreneurs do we have in the audience? Okay, and how about like VR producers or just general producers? And how about, I guess I would say, just people who are interested in VR to see, you know, if there's a way to get involved or to see. Okay, great. All right. So it's a good mix of pretty much just normal people, you know, who do Hollywood type production work, who are interested in VR to see what's going on, and then people who are doing VR, and then entrepreneurs to see what the opportunities are. So I wanted to start with kind of a really big question. We've had many false starts in VR, right? I mean, if you go back to the 80s and early 90s, there were all of these moments in time, and you can actually call out the years when they happened, sort of like 92 era, 95 era, 2001 era, when VR was going to start and was going to take over the world. What we had that happen again maybe a year or 2 years ago, but I feel like there's sort of this general groundswell of support for VR, and I always draw a lot of analogies to the VR business and the mobile business of the mid-2000s, where, I mean, it really is real this time. Like, it feels real. It feels like there's penetration of VR devices for consumers. So the question is, where are we in the development of VR as an industry now? Like, is this the moment when large companies are funding VR productions, or is it the moment when it's like moving to direct to consumer?
I think what I've heard is the expression trough of disillusionment recently. There was a big sort of interest. It seems like the money started to dry up, the enthusiasm started to wane, the device sales started to drop off, but there's a lot in the pipeline. So I think people saw the opportunity, and now the content is sort of catching up with the hype. You know, the initial sort of almost proof of concept content came out, and now it seems like there wasn't a lot of licensed and major properties. There wasn't a big hit. I know the studios seem to be investing in it. It's hard to say when that big hit will come out and establish it as a medium that people will embrace the way they embrace gaming consoles and things. But
like, what kind of big hit are you looking for?
Where's the Halo, or the, you know, where's the, assuming that the first big hit will be a game title, you know, where's the game that keeps people coming back for hours at a time, playing it over and over again, making it social? Where's the licensed property? You know, where's the Captain America experience or something like that? But from what I'm told, it's all in production. I mean, so that's what I've been sort of seeing, is that, you know, people are starting to maybe lose faith of it, but there's a much bigger second wave to kind of crash over this current wave.
Right.
I don't think that I think we're years away. I don't think anything that's in production now is going to be Halo. You didn't get to Halo without the arcades of the late 70s, early 80s. You know, it takes sometimes decades. I think a better analogy, cell phones was an obvious evolution of the telephone. You know, functionally, it's just a telephone you can walk around with. The internet is probably a more appropriate.
Well, the cell
kind of
phone was
one-to-one.
the telephone that you could walk around with, but the important moment for cell phones was digital media on the cell phone. So that
Sure.
was
No, but I'm saying in terms of VR's evolution and expectation, you know, I first saw the internet in '93. I made $300 on the internet in 2005. It took a decade to get to the point that, you know, there's web development companies and stuff like that. But in terms of a medium that you can start monetizing, everyone in 2005, 6, 7, monetization. You don't get to monetization until you have an audience.
Right.
And we will get there. And the only thing that I think will continue the trough of disillusionment is telling people that it's literally just over the next hill. It's not. It's like 80 miles away, and we just got to keep going. But they're fun miles.
What is it that's 80 miles away? You know, like, is 80 miles away like full penetration of VR devices in everybody's hands, the way we have mobile phones?
You know, multi-$100-million budgets that recoup. You know, true AAA, not sort of like a game that's going to make $4 billion in sales, and they spent, you know, $10 million making a VR add-on to it, but actual VR first. Hardware systems that don't suck, they all suck. I mean, the hardware systems suck, but they suck in the same way that Nickelodeons sucked. Nickelodeons are garbage. When you put a Nickelodeon next to a 70 mil IMAX print with full, you know, surround sound, a Nickelodeon's a joke. In the same way that a Vive is a joke compared to where we'll be in a few decades. So I'm not saying everybody give up, everybody go home. I'm more saying the disservice that we as a community are doing to ourselves is telling people that we're just a few months out. We're just, you hear it all the time. Don't worry about this camera. This is Gen 1. Gen 2 is probably 2-3 months out. I've seen the sensors. The lenses are amazing. Don't worry. I've been hearing that, you know, for years. Like everything's just around the bend. It doesn't help.
I'm waiting for like personal aviation, you know, because that's what they sold me in the 60s and 70s.
Flying cars.
Yeah.
You know, where's my flying car? And
Jetpacks.
And I think you know, I say that not from a standpoint of like VR sucks, everybody go home, it's a bubble, it's going to burst. I don't believe any of that. But I believe we're in like 1996 You know, we've got a lot of pets.coms that are going to crash, but we've got a few Amazons that we just haven't identified yet that are going to survive and take over the world.
So
We're just early.
So like maybe, hopefully not pushing my analogy to the breaking point, but what we had in mobile in '99, like for example, I started working with Shazam in '99. That was really early, right?
Yeah.
Nobody had Shazam on their phone in '99.
No,
Nobody had
yeah.
Shazam. Nobody. It was still like, this is the thing that does X, and then you get Y from it. You know, that part hadn't even happened yet. And for the next 5 years, from '99 to 2005, you had this moment of people just buying iterations of mobile phones over
Yeah.
and over again. Flip phones, candy bar shaped phones, and it was sort of in that environment when you were able to come out with the walk before you run type of content, right? You had Snake on
I was
your
going to say,
Nokia
mobile
phone.
gaming used to be Snake.
Yeah, Snake
and that was it.
Right.
But I would say you've just broken your analogy. You've pushed it past the breaking point, because the advantage that phones always have is that people are going to need to communicate,
Yeah.
right? So that's there's
So
an
penetration
inherent
will always be more with phones.
there's an inherent need for the phone, regardless of what it can do,
Yeah.
as opposed to a VR headset or an AR headset. You know, the way we position ourselves is, VR is not our primary business, even by a long stretch. We enjoy doing it. We're kind of keeping our knives sharp for when it does break the right way in the entertainment space. You know, the other thing too is, obviously this is panels on entertainment media. You know, most of the great use cases I've seen so far have been in enterprise and training and medicine and everything else. So, you know, we keep ourselves poised to take advantage should it take off. If it collapsed tomorrow, you know, it doesn't mean anything to us. I mean, I would say we've still already benefited from, although, you know, Andy thinks that Vive headsets are primitive, they are a wonderful tool for us to use as a visualization tool, you know, in terms of, you know, when we're trying to visualize a theme park attraction, for example, we can do line of sight, sanity checks, you know, we can program a theater and kind of, it's like, okay, well, everybody knows 10 rows back dead center is going to look great. Well, how's it going to look in the back left corner or the right front corner? So, you know, this iteration of VR, I think he's right. I think according to Gartner, we're starting to climb out of the trough of disillusionment, but that could mean anything from 2 to 5 to, and I think more realistically 10 years. So yeah. I like the way it's going. There's enough undercurrent. Even, you know, the posers are starting to shake out. Everybody that based their entire business case on entertainment in VR are, you know, they're starting to push up against the wall. But I think as an adjunct to other media, for now, is the way to go. Right.
Okay. So coming back to the answer to the question, that puts us very much in the, you know, what I was going to say with mobile is that we did these deals with like Frito-Lay, you know, for the first ringtones, because nobody knew what a ringtone was, and so we would go to Frito-Lay and say, here, give us $100,000 and then you can give 100,000 free ringtones away to people, right? And so we're sort of in that stage, you're saying, like where it's business to business, where the money is. If you're a producer, the money is business to business. It doesn't get to the consumers except for a bigger business providing them with a VR experience.
I think we're at the very beginning of the arcade, the VR arcade.
Right.
Like the
Chuck E. Cheese.
You know, like the home system is great. Like the Vives, like I say everything's crap from the standpoint of everything's crap and it is awesome. It is currently awesome. It is, on a long enough timeline, very primitive. But it's what we've got. You know, it's what we know. I think the really, truly engaging, awesome VR experiences that are ahead of us are all sort of location-based and sort of more VR arcade and warehouse scale and all of these things. More laser tag and arcade in terms of business model and what it kind of looks and feels like, because you just can't afford to make something at a level of quality that competes with that, because you're only targeting one headset type, one location, maybe dozens of locations, one PC. You own the full stack, you own the building, you own the motion
So it
capture.
can't be lame, and that's the only way to make it not lame, 100%.
That's, I mean, that's where the AAA stuff's going to be. It's going to be, have you gone, you know, and right now, have you gone to New York to Madame Tussauds to see The Void? You know, that's what everyone. Have you done Ghostbusters? Have you done Ghostbusters? Soon it'll be, have you gone down to Disneyland and done the Star Wars thing? Like, that's that's where where your AAA is going to be, and it's
Right.
because it's a little garden that can be controlled. The home experiences, they're going to stay. We're in Minesweeper
and that's,
Snake
I have to say,
Solitaire.
as a venture attorney, that those are the business plans I've seen.
Yeah.
Are, like kind of like real estate plays, like we're gonna take this space in Battery Park City and make it awesome.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue is also the rapid pace of technology development. We're talking about, sort of looking at VR as the Vive today, right? But, AR is coming on a lot faster, at least these mixed reality devices, the Magic Leaps and their ilk, assuming there's a real product there. The idea of a pair of smart glasses becoming more of a daily utility than something that you have to kind of block out the world for.
Yeah.
So that could potentially overtake what we're currently looking at as VR. VR may only be a location-based and a real estate-based thing, and the actual gaming and the other kind of interactive utility of the product may be a pair of smart glasses, which could just as easily go into a VR mode with a pair of blackout shades. So I think there's a lot of other technologies that are coming up that would be disruptive or supportive of what we're currently looking at, we'll just say the sort of first wave of 3.0 VR or something.
Yeah.
But we can't ignore all the other stuff that's being done that has VR-like qualities that may be more of a mainstream product than what we're looking at today.
Right. So I have a sort of a case study way of addressing what you just said. So, during a very dark moment in my career when I was making 100% zero money and I was about very in debt, let's put it that way, right after the internet crash, I went and I interviewed with Cisco, with the general counsel of Cisco, and almost took an in-house job there. And what I asked him was, what's going on with technology? Because technology stocks were in the shitter, and nobody wanted to talk to anybody about any technology. And he said, listen to me, technology is a mountain of growth. It's an Everest-sized mountain of growth, and we just walk down a little hill to walk up more. And that was exactly right. And I feel like it may be the same. What you're describing is that kind of a situation, like where there's just this mountain of growth that VR will represent when you see the penetration in all industries and in the entertainment industry. And it's like you said, you just don't want to oversell it now because not necessarily everyone is going to see the mountain.
You can't get disillusioned if you haven't been lied to. So if you're honest with people where it is and where it's going, then it will grow organically. I think there's people that want it to grow faster than it can.
Yeah.
And they want to. It's like Tinkerbell, like clap if you believe in fairies, and everyone's like furiously clapping to the tune of billions of dollars right now, but that doesn't help. That doesn't. You need a time machine if you want this to go faster.
Right.
Like these products take years. Best thing Oculus has said recently, they were kind of very guilty in the beginning of a lot of drum beating and sort of lying about sort of
Well,
what
that's
things
exactly
were.
who I was thinking of, right? Didn't they
big
fire
time.
a bunch of
But they
people?
said something. They said something very smart. And they've kind of gotten very realistic since Facebook has kind of slapped them around a little bit, where they've said we're not bringing out a headset every year. We're not going to. Stop expecting us to. We will not. That's a big deal because that means all of us don't have to go, oh, Jesus. I mean, there's almost no content that was developed in 2013 that is currently consumable. It was built for SDKs that are depreciated and no longer work. Anything that ran on a DK1, for the most part, is currently unwatchable.
Right.
Unless
And over in
you have a
Game
old
Land,
PC.
your device, it went like 8 years before they even issued a new device.
Yeah,
right?
console life was like 9 years, and we can't be on a 6-month cycle.
Right.
We can't afford to.
Well, and to your point about VR arcades, I agree as well. I mean, Madame Tussauds is a wonderful experience. We do a fair amount of work in the themed entertainment space, and the biggest concern on their side,
Themed entertainment space meaning theme parks.
theme parks, location-based entertainment, of which VR arcades would be considered part of that ecosystem. The biggest complaint I hear from all these experienced design firms is throughput. They are categorically conditioned to, like, I must get 1,500 people through per hour.
Yep.
The VR in its current iteration can't support those numbers. So they're going to have to be extraordinarily compelling experience so you can offset the throughput with the money. You have to be able to charge significantly more money to make the ROI work, because you're not going to get 1,500 people an hour through. So I think in a lot of respects, that's why Iger came out and said, Disney's going to lean more on AR. It's a lighter weight interface. It's not as maintenance and hygiene, intensive stuff that you have to do it to make it work for people coming in behind the people that are using it currently. So I think ultimately for it to work long term, it's going to have to get lighter and faster and easier to put on and off individuals.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the context of how we got to where we are right now. The reason that there were so many VR startups and all of this drum beating was going on is because Mark Zuckerberg acquired Oculus for such a huge sum of money that a lot of people, a lot of venture capitalists assume, well, there must be a business model there. And if you look at it, I'm sure most of the people on this panel would agree with me, there isn't. We've been involved at my company in creating very high-profile VR experiences that cost several $1 million. You're never going to recoup more than $80,000 or $90,000 from that. So that's not a sustainable business. And then initially there was a lot of buzz around the idea of marketing. A lot of film marketing, a lot of branded entertainment was going to use VR, but you still don't have the headsets in the hands of enough people to ever compete with a YouTube ad or a billboard. So it's just not a sustainable business. Also, there's a lot of confusion about what these different technologies do. At the present day, and I don't know that we'll ever get there, because the next point I want to make is, what is VR and what is it good for? My brother-in-law works in oncology over at Cedars-Sinai. When we sit around the dinner table together, he and I have deep conversations about VR because he's using it, because his use is a very focused study. He doesn't want to be distracted. They're doing research. It's perfect for that. We have clients that are doing museum spaces and planning sets and theme parks. They do not want to be disturbed. They want to go into that tunnel and build and work with digital assets. Wide audiences, all these pictures you see on social media of a bunch of people sitting there with Oculus on. I mean, if you go and see a film, it's a communal experience. You don't want to be cut off from the people around you. It just isn't conducive to that. So I don't think that VR is ever going to become a mass use consumer product, except for gaming and location-based entertainment. If you go over to the IMAX VR Center, and we've created content for that, it's $10 for 10 minutes, and the kids are lined up around the block, and they're just raking in money. I don't know if it'll last forever, but the content is very mixed. Some of it is great, some of it not so great, but there's definitely a monetization plan there. So the people are creating content for those IMAX VR centers, and I think there's only 2 of them right now, but of course they have plans for dozens of them, are going to see a profit, and that's going to allow them to hire and train people. But most of the people that are in this business right now, as Chris just mentioned, it's a diversified business. You have to have some other core business. You can't just produce VR content unless you have an angel investor and sustain a business. There just isn't a monetization plan. We are starting to see...
So the monetization plan is big companies paying for it?
Well, the monetization plan partly is these tech companies that are building all of this hardware need content. So Google, HTC, Oculus, they can build the best head-mounted display in the world, but what are they showing people on it? So
right, but not like Procter & Gamble, Diageo and those
it's
companies?
just not...
Because they all have a head of VR.
Right, but I don't see it lasting, because what is the end use? What is that going to...
Here, right?
Yeah.
They have a
I
head
think
of VR,
so.
right?
I'm going to echo
pitch
what's
that
already
person.
been said on this panel. The money in VR right now, in my experience, and we're generating revenue in VR, is business to business. We're using it as a business tool for people that want to create and manipulate digital assets in a closed-off environment, or control, because of maybe security issues, IP issues, who is in that experience with them and what they're doing. That is a very robust business right now. The idea that the trailer for Blade Runner is going to come out and you're going to make money hand over fist on creating content for that for consumers, I think is a false path. I don't see that happening. There are companies like D-Box that have chairs, motion scripted chairs with VR experiences that marketing companies are using, but I just don't think it's a sustainable business.
Well, which D-Box?
D-Box is a company out of Canada. They create motion scripted chairs similar to what they have at the Regal Cinemas downtown, but that's a different company. It's a Korean company, and the chair is scripted to match the media. So if you put on a VR experience and the chair is moving even a millimeter to match the space shuttle that you're on, it's a really compelling experience. It's amazing, actually. But I don't see people paying large sums of money for it outside of these VR arcades. And one thing that no one's touched on yet is Dreamscape, which is about to really open in a big way in Q1 of next year. And that's the company Spielberg's invested in that is more along the lines of the Void. It takes into account the location you're in. So like the Vive, it's room scale. It can tell how far you and I are away from each other.
Right.
So that becomes a more interactive experience.
I think there was a Digital Hollywood keynote from that CEO like a year ago, and I watched that whole thing. Just to say how fast these things are growing, I feel like I'm, not dumb when it comes to these business models. But I watched that whole thing and I thought, I didn't get it, but now I'm getting it, because you guys are saying that this theme park approach and sort of real estate approach, the Void, that's what the moment is. Like,
But
that's
the
where you're
problem,
gonna
the
get
problem
the
is
AAA VR experience.
throughput. It's getting bodies through the door, because these
Yeah.
are extremely expensive. In order to have a high traffic experience, you have to be in a large urban area, which means you're paying very high rent. This is a very expensive equipment to maintain, expensive media to create, so you need a lot of bodies paying $10 or $20 and going through there, and no one's really cracked that yet that I'm aware of.
Except for IMAX, and that was the business they were in before.
Exactly. And they were only doing it in 2 locations, New York and LA. Will it scale? We'll see.
Right. So, back to my case study. I'm focused on this. I don't know why I like this case study so much, but if you were to compare 2 companies, so you had Magic Leap, and I'd love to hear what everyone's opinion is on Magic Leap and on
Vaporware.
How
Right.
can we have one?
Right.
I've seen some promotional videos.
Sorry, that's it's kind of a trigger for me.
So what we're doing is we're comparing, contrasting Magic Leap against Daiquiri. But go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, that's an easy one. Daiquiri is for real, and nobody knows if Magic Leap's for real. I hope that they have enough money to be real, but everything I'm hearing coming out of Florida is not good. So
Okay,
it's
so,
like,
so to set it up, in case anyone doesn't know what these 2 companies are, Magic Leap decided to go pure play entertainment. They said, we're going to be a pure play entertainment company. We have something that nobody else has. It's going to be amazing. It's going to change the world. And then we'll go into other industries. And Daiquiri is almost the exact opposite business model. Basically, they said, we already have a thriving industrial business, and we're going to go into entertainment as a division of our company. And this was 2-3 years ago. And they gave it a good 5-year run. So my timelines are messed up, but they gave it a good 5-year run, and then they just pulled the plug on the whole entertainment division for Daiquiri, and they focused only on AR for industrial uses.
and it was a smart play on their part. I mean, their smart helmet is the best AR device I've personally used. I've tried most of them at Augmented World Expo earlier this year, and the ODG glasses, the R9s, the latest iterations, have a lot of promise, I think. But the Daiquiri Smart Helmet is the deal. And as far as Magic Leap goes, like I said, I know that they're having a hard time attracting top tier talent to go to Florida, because most of that talent exists either in Silicon Valley or here
So
in
they're
LA.
Florida based.
Yeah.
The idea being we can start our company wherever we want.
And if you want to see their tech, they make you sign an NDA about this big, and you can't. So it's like, I hope I'm wrong. I think it would be a blow to the immersive industry if they burn $8 billion to the ground and don't have anything to show for it. But don't talk to me about Magic Leap personally until they actually have something to show.
The Magic Leap has a 1-to-1 trajectory with an Israeli company called A Better Place. And A Better Place raised, I think, $300 million to basically do what Tesla is doing. Electric cars, battery packs, home power packs, charging and changing stations, a network of chargers. They spent $299 million raising $300 million. They made one car, one battery pack, one charging station, and then folded. Magic Leap is on a trajectory that is identical to them. They're a fundraising mechanism first and a tech company third. Their second industry is hiring our friends and paying them,
That's
six
how
fig-
I've experienced that.
I won't say anything about their tech. I will say this: if you are
But I
going
mean,
to
Los
change,
Alamos Labs hires our friends too, right?
sure, no, but I mean, if you're going to change, if you're going to change the world with a technology, why would you hire screenwriters, sound designers? You would argue you would hire engineers and
they're-
scientists.
right.
You
Well,
wouldn't
they're
hire
saying they
visual
have
effects
the
artists
engineers and
and
scientists.
writers. You wouldn't hire the type of people that are really good at making pitch material to fundraise. You would hire the kind of people that are really good at making technology.
Right.
So I won't say anything about their tech or their prospects. I will say I know a lot of people that I like very much who should not be working at Magic Leap because they don't make technology, they make content. And that's a really important thing so
So
are they a Ponzi
3DO.
scheme? Time will tell, but it certainly isn't looking good.
The danger of this industry
3DO
is
shipped the
that
product though.
there's so
So
much
3DO did ship a product, yeah.
there's so much appetite
dating
for
myself.
this content and technology that you can make a lot of money creating pitch materials and decks and starting startup companies and coming up with concepts, and it's starting to wane a bit, but there is that romance period with new technology where people's wishes and dreams are getting ahead of their common sense.
Yeah, it's
You know, I hate to go backwards to your mobile phone analogy, but there is one technology that wasn't mentioned that I think was the gateway to where we are today, and that was the BlackBerry, because it became an enterprise product that was well tractioned and well received and used extensively, and it de-emphasized its original point, which was to be used as a phone. It really became the first truly portable computing device, or at least the
Do you
portable
guys
computing
remember the
computing
BlackBerry?
device. Everyone remembers the BlackBerry. It's not
Okay.
that far in the past.
come on.
They just released a new model.
Yeah, it's like this.
I know people who still have it because it's faster.
You know, Apple took the sort of technology that made the BlackBerry interesting, communication, and then added the visual component to it, and then, you know, smartphones became a real business, and then we are where we are.
Yeah.
You know, I think AR, at least the smart glasses that we're looking at, the ODG R9s and whatever else, we're sort of looking at that level of BlackBerry, where a type of product, be it HoloLens or Meta or what ODG is doing, or even Magic Leap, could potentially have that smartphone, but they're leaping forward too far to develop something that there's been no, you know, my role at THX is in product. You know, there's no product development, there's no customer development. It's just simply, we're gonna go make this thing. And it's pretty risky, but I think there are other companies doing intermediary products that will get traction because they're not emphasizing, you know, AAA gaming titles, whereas they're emphasizing the ability to just simply do projected hologram communication, which
Yeah.
may not be as difficult as a real-time, you know, interactive, you know, social game.
Right. That was my first experience with the BlackBerry. It was really early. It was like, I think it was like 97 or something, and somebody just said, "Here, check this out," and they sent an email to me like that fast. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Whoa!" So what is the app for that? And like, and kind of to broaden the question a little bit, I personally have this vision that I don't really, my eyes are getting worse, and I don't really enjoy using my smartphone anymore. It's literally painful, and I'm getting like 400 emails a day, and I have to look at it all the time. I'm looking at it, you know, something like 30% of my wakeful hours is looking at the smartphone. Not fun, right? So I've thought about this. What I would like to see is some kind of VR device that takes over that job for me and makes my experience of normal personal communication better.
You're
Is that-
describing smart glasses. That's
Okay,
literally
so-
what you're describing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and they're coming. They're just currently, the ODGs are heavy, they're thick, and your eyes dry out because they're so hot that your eyes literally start hurting because they're dry. So that's where we are today. But we'll be
You're
here.
baking your eyes.
We'll literally, but we'll be here eventually, and we'll be contact lenses eventually, and we'll be in the Matrix eventually. But where we are is AR is essentially a gag on a phone currently, and VR is big clunky, you know, plastic headsets with, you know, mediocre tracking. That's where we are. It's fucking amazing. But
It's
that's,
amazing.
That's
And-
where we are.
right,
You know,
and-
we're in the
and-
brick cell phone era.
and-
5-pound things that last an hour. Like
Right.
that's
And
where
I
we
always
are.
think of these, you know, just for everyone's benefit, I always think of these things as the biggest problem that most entrepreneurs make is that they're too early and they're too far ahead. And that's the most common, aside from, you know, they didn't raise enough money, so they died for that reason. That's the next biggest reason. So I'm always thinking of this from an entrepreneurial perspective. If you know where you are in the development of the market, then you know what your entrepreneurial opportunities are. So you're saying that the entrepreneurial opportunities are in theme park type stuff and in just a little bit simpler device that doesn't like get way out there, 10 years in the future.
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah, as like today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why a big focus for what we're doing is looking into sound technologies.
Right.
It's maybe a little bit of the gold rush to make the pickaxes, because at the end, having the right solutions that plug into these devices will make these devices that much more attractive.
Well, I'm really glad you took it in that direction, because that to me, that's fascinating, is the amount, the degree to which we don't talk about sound activation as being an important technological shift that happened in the last 12 months. Where, because we have total penetration, everybody's device, even if it's a BlackBerry, would do sound activation, and yet there's a lot of work to be done there. So what kinds of things are happening in that area?
Well, I mean, obviously everyone's familiar with the voice-activated devices, so the new Google Home devices, the Amazon devices. We're working on immersive audio solutions. So how can you get the illusion of a home theater type experience with a pair of headphones, or even with a pair of speakers? There's algorithmic ways of offering that, both to pinpoint speakers and to just simply allow the sound to surround you. And that's as relevant for VR AR as it is for simply watching a movie on your tablet with a pair of headphones. So those kinds of technologies are in their early stages as well. They've been around for a while. They're much like VR. They're kind of getting a second crack at mainstream because there's more demand for higher quality entertainment experiences on your cheaper devices.
Yeah.
So we're lucky that we have a brand that stands for quality, and so being able to, we're doing a lot of research. We're doing a rendering research study right now. We're actually going to publish a paper at AWE next week, talking about how does one properly render sound when it's using a HRTF or your own personal hearing profile, to be able to understand the science behind it. So as these new devices come on the market, whether it be like a pair of smart glasses with little speakers, or whether it be a pair of earbuds or a pair of over-the-ear headphones,
Right.
How do you develop and deliver the right product to ensure that the sound can equal what is the kind of equivalent of the quality video?
Got it.
In my experience, we're a visualization company. We don't generally deal with sound design or music composition or anything like that. But
I'm out of here.
what I have noticed though is for people in the VR space, and I think ultimately it will be the AR space too, because sound's equally important for both for an immersive experience. Is I think generally speaking, producers tend to undervalue and underestimate the cost of sound. I've heard differing stories, but my own anecdotal evidence is like most of the stuff that I've seen that we work on is 2 to 3x what it would be in terms of how much you need to spend to get the spatial audio correct, all the way through to final,
Right.
versus a traditional rectangle film. So I think the price will come down. I think that there are a lot of people working on the problem. Sennheiser's doing some great work.
Yeah.
But it sounds is vitally important to the space and to the immersion and everything else, because we know if there's any hitch in the sound, you're just going to break immersion. So, but those of you who are entrepreneurs, make sure you put a very healthy pad on your sound budget for doing immersive experiences.
Yeah, that's true. Our firm MG Plus has 2 sound clients that are both consumer companies, and one has an over-the-ear, kind of like the headphones a music geek or a DJ would wear, and that's what their device looks like, and it has cameras in it and an immersive sound experience because they're covering your whole ear.
Binaural microphones.
Right, and then the other one is Hook Audio, and they make binaural microphones, and their entire work has been around making that spatial audio sound in cheapo, in the ear microphones, or I should just say really tiny in the ear microphones. And their device is also a spatial sound capture device. So it's, I think you're right, and those are the only 2 companies I know of that are in that area. I'm sure you see a lot more of them.
Well, for the consumer, it's smaller, but I mean, there's a company in the hallway up there, Here 360, that has a great spatialization,
Right.
a great ambisonic microphone.
Yep.
Yeah.
The sound space is definitely lagging behind the hardware for playback. You know, like the thing, they're a few years behind where the visual side is in terms of ambisonic and spatial audio and binaural rendering and HRTFs and all that stuff. The tools to manipulate that are still extraordinarily primitive, and the workflows are very primitive and very labor intensive and very limited. But that's where we were with the visual side. It was extraordinarily difficult to do 360 video in 2013.
Well, we have
It
a lot
is
of
now, like,
producers in the audience. Where are we? I mean, do we have a language that people have agreed upon, or like
spatial audio is kind of how it's referred to. You'll hear people talk about binaural. That's a correct term applied incorrectly. But spatial audio is basically the audio is in the room, and your head, it doesn't move relative to your head. It's not glued to your head. And so, you know, there's a lot of people now that'll be like, we need binaural audio. And it's like, you don't need binaural audio, you need binaural rendering of spatial audio. So the terminology is, you know, you'll hear ambisonic a lot. That's a form of capture.
No, when I'm speaking language, I'm speaking programming language or tools that actual producers could use to make.
There's not, I mean, there's tools from, you know, like there's tools for Pro Tools, there's Reaper, there's, you know, there's Fraunhofer has some pretty nice stuff. There's a microphone from Sennheiser. There's tools.
There's no workflow.
The workflow is extraordinarily difficult, and you sort of get to it's sort of where 5.1 was in the beginning. Like, I remember the first 5.1 movies always had really distracting sounds in the back of the theater. And you'd be watching a movie, like I remember Apollo 13, I kept going, what the fuck is, because there was just like, and it was because the technology to pan around in 5.1 was very limited and primitive, and so they just kind of did what they could in the time they had, but then also the workflow, the practices, and honestly the expertise were not built yet. Absolutely nobody knew how to properly shoot 360 video 3-4 years ago. I would say very few people know how to record, edit, mix spatial audio. So I'm personally, the only thing that I think matters right now, and it is where I am focused right now, is people. We need, if we're gonna have AAA content, you could literally pour $1 trillion into a group of people right now and not get a AAA VR experience out of it. And it's because nobody has a decade of experience in any of these categories. Everybody's transferring their knowledge from film and game and
After all
and other
those
stuff.
iterations of VR development in the past, you're saying that there's nobody from...
Nobody knows how to write for this stuff. Nobody knows how to edit this stuff. Nobody knows how to, you know, and I'm saying that as somebody who is trying to figure that out. I'm saying anybody who says that they have mastered VR narrative is selling you something you should not buy.
Right.
The thing that we have to...
The way I heard Chris Milk say it was look, I managed to keep people engaged for 8 minutes. 2 hours is well beyond anything I could ever do.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a certain like reality, humbleness, and sort of self-awareness that's required where like nothing matters right now, but the thing that matters is not, if you don't do something right now, that's what matters. Like, that's a bad thing.
Right.
Like, you have to just make something and know that in 6 months, you could make the Citizen Kane of VR, or you could make the Pink Flamingos of VR. Nobody will know either way.
Yeah, just keep going.
Nobody will ever see it, numerically speaking, and it won't be playable in 6 months.
Yeah.
It will never be distributed. But what will matter,
Sounds like a
it's
good
it's
business.
Experience
it's
you gain by
the experience you
doing
gain. And how do you manage a team that's coming from live action
Engineering,
and post-production
yeah.
and software development
Right.
and video game development? How do you manage that team? Waterfall, agile? You know, what do you do? And the answer is there is no management technique that exists. There is no creative process that exists. There are
it.
pieces of it, but the only way to verify what's best is to keep running projects through it and go, that was a mess. Let's not do that again. But that one piece was good. Let's do that again.
The other side of that is the legal and production framework. We're doing contracts right now with studios for VR experiences that are funded and going, and I have artists working, and the lawyers we're all just tearing our hair out because there isn't a framework. You can't, we're trying to get our arms around something that doesn't exist. And the other important point is the audience isn't very sophisticated. Myself, the first time I put on the Oculus, I was doing a theme park that I was brought in to produce, and we ported all of my assets into this dome, and we were able to look at it. Yeah. And it blew my mind. I thought, wow, this is the future. This is amazing. And within 6 months, when I looked at that same media, this is crap. This is so substandard. The head-mounted display is terrible. So your first exposure to it, when you've never experienced VR, is awe-inspiring. But it needs to continue to build, and I feel like I agree. We're not there yet. We're still in the building phase.
And all the experienced guys you were referring to, you talk about in the mid-'90s, last time VR was hot again, those guys were focused on the technology, not on the content creation, right? They, you know, the Amir Rubins of the world, who I collectively refer to as the get off my lawn VR guys, because, you know, a lot of those guys, you know, from Lanier in the 80s to, you know, those guys in the mid-'90s, were focusing on just making it work. You know, you needed two Onyx 2 reality engines to render in real time, one for each eye, and a 10-pound counterweighted headset. You know, it was. I saw it 22 years ago. It was blew my mind at the time and made me sick as a dog. But you know, but it was all about the technology and not the content creation. So those guys, when the last this current wave of VR hit, call it, you know, DK1 2013, they all were like, I'm going to monetize in the quickest way I know how. So they all threw on their lot on, you know, in Amir Rubin's case, he threw in with PSVR for the peripherals. You know, Jim Stewartson, his company, Awesome Rocket Ship, is about creating location-based VR pods. They saw it crash to the ground 22 years ago. A lot of those guys moved into 3D TV. Everybody's going to watch stereo in their living room. We all know how that worked out. So they've been burned in a lot of cases twice by failures of technology to catch fire. And so, you know, most of them are like, let's do the part that'll make us some money and then get the hell out.
There's a lot of
thinking about you're trying to find people who can tell stories with VR
and it's extraordinarily hard. I mean, one of the biggest things we struggle with is the cinematic language that we're used to doesn't work. Yeah. You know, we had to come up with concepts. You know, our first foray into the space was for an app on the phone called Google Spotlight Stories. And there's a reason that the one that we worked on is still to date the only live action version of in Spotlight Stories. You know, it got a lot of press recently. All the other vignettes, VR experiences in the app are 3D fully animated, because live action with visual effects and that stuff is hard. Yeah. And we were brought on it because Justin Lin was directing, and we had done 4 Fast and Furious films with him. And this was over 3 years ago. And you know, we naively approached it like, oh, VR, it's a bigger screen. And you know, of course we were in for a very rude awakening, and mercifully Google was funding it with, you know, unlimited resources, you know, so a $1.2 million project turned into a $10 million project, because essentially it had to be shot at least twice, if not more than that. Three times all told, right? Yeah. And we got to, you know, so for us, a 3-week previs TechViz gig turned into a 3-month previs TechViz postviz gig, versions 1, 2, and 3. And you know, it ultimately produced, which is still one of the more compelling experiences in the headset, but it was extraordinarily hard. And just figuring out the language of, okay, we know where Justin wants, we know the Antichrist in the headset can look at their toes the whole time if they want to, but here's the way that the director would like you to look. And so, well, what do we call it? Well, we'll call it the privileged view, or maybe the hero view. And you know, at one point in the experience, you have an alien that grows to the size of Godzilla, and you're trying to figure out how big is he going to be. Well, you know, and composing him in 360 so that he, you know, you won't just see his foot next to a human being. All those things, all that stuff. The language of film did not work. We really had to come up with a kind of a new language on the fly. I
feel like it's the language of theater.
In some respects, yeah.
It's similar to going to see a Broadway show, because we can all be paying attention to something different. But the important point that I want to make on the back of your story is the success comes when you finish a project like that and you're able to keep those people working and learning and developing. Too many times these VR projects have been created and then everybody scatters back into traditional industries because there isn't a business model to support it, and we lose all of that collective knowledge we've
Right.
gained. You
Right.
do have to do things 2 or 3 times
Right.
on your first go
Yeah.
at VR because it's a brand new medium.
Yeah, that's sad in a lot of areas where you get this great team together and then they
Just disband and.
But there's
there
also
isn't-
so many skill sets that you would need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars to keep that team
Right.
active, because the 360 video project you do, you don't need any of that talent for the AR app that you make,
Right.
the next time. So it's a really tough conundrum too, because we're not just talking about VR, we're not just talking about AR, we're talking about location-based entertainment, we're talking about multi-screen projection. We're talking about a sort of merging of technology that shares a lot in common, and sometimes even all of it's running in Unity or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
But the
so you
people
just get
need.
pulled into all of these different areas the minute you open the door.
VR
you-
door.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
he does.
Yeah.
Mercifully, we don't. We're actually ideally positioned, right? Because we're just visualizing it. We can mock up an AR experience, a VR experience, a theme park experience. We don't have to deliver the back end, the sound, and the actual finished product. So we're staying out of those waters, and we compete with as few people as possible to work with as many people as possible. I'm gonna leave the hard stuff.
I was
to
gonna say,
Andy here.
I bet you sleep at night, don't you?
I really do, and I sleep well.
The reason I stopped when you said D-Box is I have a client named D-Box, and what
Okay.
they do is more like what you do. For the real estate business, they just do
Okay.
experiences that will show you what it's like to be in a building. But you're right, they don't have to build the building.
No, it's all. Oops, sorry.
So Jim, go ahead. Yeah.
Fascinating panel. Jason brought up something that triggered my mind, which was BlackBerry really, and the enterprise adoption of it, which ultimately afterwards to the consumer market. Isn't there some play here potentially? Businesses spend billions and billions of dollars on travel for meetings, not to mention the wasted time for executives. The flat screen teleconference cuts some of that.
So-
But I've seen the Microsoft hologram.
Yeah.
And is that a possible way to jumpstart this industry by tapping into the billions of dollars that are spent and wasted time of
Yeah.
business women and men traveling and staying at hotels?
NVIDIA thinks so.
Did you all hear that question? The question is there a way to use in this new industry to reduce production costs of all the hotels and travel that goes
Yeah.
into making a production?
But I feel like that's already happened. I can do that on my iPhone. And there was a business called Altspace that failed, and I don't know anything about
Microsoft
Altspace.
bought them.
They're back.
Microsoft saved them.
Okay, there you go. It's back. And what that was, the first time I tried it at VRLA, I put on the head-mounted display, and they had scanned my badge coming in, and everyone in the virtual space knew who I was, and we're having a conversation. And I thought it was a great business model. We could use this for teleconference, but I think if I can do it on my iPhone or with Skype from my computer, it's an unnecessary and frivolous business. Yeah.
Well, so creating
experience a
creating
snow
this
crash?
content requires a level of collaboration that's extraordinarily difficult not in a headset. We do a lot of like one person wearing a headset while everyone else is looking at the screen.
Right.
And you try to center your field of view on the thing you're talking about, and sometimes you have to like take off the thing and
Yeah.
like point at the thing on the screen that you're talking about. So getting everybody into a shared collaborative space is going to be critical in terms of being able to say, I don't want the castle over there, I want the castle over there. That kind of like virtual production that films are doing now, that started with Avatar and has spread, that's very applicable to creating sort of immersive content, because you sometimes just need a laser pointer in your hand or a thing that lets you grab the thing and flip it over and go, no, that's wrong. That kind of thing can take days in the current workflows.
And these days, we're building a film. We're also building the VR marketing piece. We're building a theme park. So all these transmedia partners can just jack in with their head-mounted display and not even have audio, but witness what the director's doing so we can work in parallel. So it is being used, but its best use is when it's highly secretive IP and you're locking down the number of people that are using it. So I don't see it being adopted by the masses.
There's time for one more question. Is there any questions? Go for it. You were first. You gotta be.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming and chatting with us. I was just in a panel where they said we're not going to get rid of the headset or, in fact, any wearable thing like goggles or smart device or anything in our lifetimes. We're not going to see that. I just got a text
think it's a spectrum. VR and AR are on a spectrum, and multi-screen entertainment, and I know what you do. Renee makes a AR wall, which is sort of like a real-time tracked camera, kind of like a cave, but for cinema, to replace green screen. I can't put an AR wall in my living room in its current incarnation. I certainly can't put it on all 6 sides of my room. So every piece of technology is going to have its pros and cons. There's going to be experiences that are better suited to a phone than a pair of glasses, than a headset, than a cave, than a warehouse. It's a big spectrum.
That's challenging.
But there's no sort of like, as soon as Apple comes out with the iGlass 2, we're done. Everybody else go home. No, there's going to be Vive 5, and there's going to be PSVR 8. Nothing's going to replace anything else. It's just different experiences are going to lean into different pieces of hardware. Do I want to get rid of the goggles and the glasses? Hell yeah, it's really uncomfortable. But am I going to replace it with a giant wall-sized screen? In some instances, yes. But in some instances, no.
All right, they're mad at me, but I'm gonna let one more.
Just a quick one. If you were talking to a 19 or 20-year-old, knowing what you know,
Right.
who's in college today and doing computer
Right.
software engineering or something like that, how do they navigate all the different platforms and all the different, is it Unity, is it Unreal, and all the things you were mentioning about it's hard to keep a team together? What would you advise?
CS50.net.
Learn Unity.
Unity, CS50.net. It will teach them sort of how to. It's Harvard's introductory computer science class. It's game changing. Then Code Academy to practice those skills. Unity once you've kind of got that foundation, and then unfortunately you're gonna have to learn like 87 other programs. No, I mean, I'm serious. They're going to need to know Maya, Houdini, C4D, After Effects, Fusion,
Unreal.
Nuke, Unreal,
They're good at that, though.
Lumberyard.
But once you get going,
There's a
once
lot
you
of shared.
know how to do it,
There's a lot of shared technique
it
and technology.
waterfalls. I mean, get a basic engineering degree, understand how programming works, learn C++ or C# or C++ or C#, learn a production tool, then it's not difficult to transfer that knowledge to something that may use a slightly different interface or slightly different code base, but you've got the background to be able to adapt.
Right. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much. This is a beautiful panel. Apologies again for being late. I still think we've made a good one. So.
Thanks, Michael.